Hi, I'm Mark Scherer. I'm the CEO and founder of Encompass Life and the host of the Encompassing Life Podcast. Today we have Linda Dieffenbach on the call, and she is with Wellness and Harmony, and she's been working with people with trauma for 20 years, and she uses a variety of methodologies. And I'm looking forward to having a conversation with her today on the show. Welcome to the show, Linda.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
You're welcome. So, you said you've been doing this for 20 years, and before that you were in social work as well.
Yes. Yeah.
And you made the transition to this from social work because
it was much more aligned with my vision and what I wanted to do. And I felt like I could be much more beneficial, bring much more benefit to, that came in tongue tied today. But yeah, I could bring more benefit to people through this work than I could within the realm of social work.
Can you share what's the differences that had you go into this?
That had me go into this?
Yeah, so you said in social work you couldn't do what you're doing here. So what's the difference between what you were doing and what you're doing here?
So in social work, that area is very rigid and regulated. And I actually decided that I wanted to do this work while I was in school. And then I worked in social work for a while anyway, while I was also learning Reiki and learning the other things that I practice. But the work that I do is very organic and very intuitive. And it enables me to connect with people on an energetic level and move through and beyond some of the mental constructs that we have that keep us from being able to even acknowledge what's happening within us. So we have a lot of defensive strategies that we engage in, and traditional like talk therapy and counseling, it can be like, for me particularly, like when I was in therapy, like I was really good at just not doing anything and being unproductive because I had so many defensive strategies in place that I could talk for an hour about nothing and get nowhere and have no benefit. Even though I wanted help, I couldn't get it.
Right.
So, but with the work that I do, I work with the consciousness of the chakra system and with the energy field. And so I'm able to tune into what's happening in the body while I'm having a conversation with someone and guide them deeper, because I'm able to tune into the chakra system and that level of consciousness. Hi, Kitty. So for example, when I was younger, when I first got into this work, I had already learned Reiki, and that kind of, was my gateway into learning a whole lot of other things within the holistic realms. And I met one of my mentors, Elizabeth Frediani, who does a process called chakra clearing with applied integration. And I signed up to do a series of sessions with her, and I made more progress in 3 sessions than I had a lifetime of therapy.
Right.
Because she was tuned into my body. She was tuned into my energy field, and she just kept guiding me in and guiding me in and guiding me in. And I couldn't bypass it. So when she offered to teach me what she did, I was all in. So
awesome. And how long ago was that?
I met her in 2006. Wow. So almost 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And I trained with her for the initial training that I did with her it was about 2.5 to 3 years. And I still train with her and mentor with her.
Gotcha. When you trained with her, was it a one-on-one, or was she teaching multiple people at the same time?
There was a small group of us. There was 7 of us, I think, in the class.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so it was a nice intimate.
Yeah. To go deep. It seemed like to me it helps. It helps to have a group because everybody's experiencing from the other person as well. Somehow or another, there's a magic occurs when 3 or 4 people in the group begin to move, and somebody who's been a holdout goes, "Well, if they can do it, I can do it." When their emotional body gets that, if they can do it, I can do it type of a deal, and that's when things start to really happen for them.
Yeah, you kind of pull each other along.
Yeah. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
And so you've been in private practice for 20 years now, using this methodology now for 18 or so, right? And so how do people find out about you? Like, where do you get your clients from?
A lot of people find me online. So they find me through my website, wellnessandharmony.com. They find me through social media. So although I don't spend a lot of time on social media anymore, but some people do find me there. And then through like word of mouth referrals, other clients let friends and family know that they should come see me.
Awesome. And your practice has been growing?
Yeah, it ebbs and flows, but it's been kind of a steady growth over the years most of the time.
And do you do group as well as privates, or you do mostly private?
I do both. So I teach classes and workshops. I do also train people in Reiki, and I do host sometimes like women's circles and, lunar, like full moon circles and things like that, as well as one-on-one work. So I work on a lot of different levels with people, and I do online classes as well.
Gotcha. Well, you're busy. Congratulations. Congratulations.
Thanks.
You're welcome. So tell me, like, what's like when people come to see you, like what's the typical setup of how they come in? And what's the duration of you working with them? And three-part question. If you can share also maybe some amazing results that you've gotten with your clients.
Yeah, so the duration of time I work with people varies quite a bit depending on what they bring in. There's some people that I work with for, a couple of sessions, and it's very targeted and focused on like a specific aspect of their lives that they need support with. And then there's other people that I've worked with ongoing over long periods of time, starting out usually for a targeted support and then ongoing for just navigating, life as it comes up, and just, wellness maintenance, so to speak. So there's what's beautiful about the work that I do is that it's very broad in scope because you're working with consciousness, you're working with, I can work with pretty much any level of a person's life, whether they're dealing with, personal relationships, intimate relationships, career related challenges, past trauma history. To be clear, I'm not a counselor or a
Uh,
therapist, but, trauma comes in all the time because most of us have some level of trauma. So there's a broad range of what I can help people in. There's one woman that I worked with, and when I first started working with her, she has a lot of significant trauma, a lot of abuse in her childhood, lost her mother when she was fairly young, and her father was very abusive, also a minister, so there was a complexity around that as well that was very challenging. And one of the things within this was she is so disconnected from self, and she apologized for everything. Like every other word out of her mouth was like, I'm sorry, I'm
I'm sorry.
sorry, I'm sorry. And I've worked with her on and off over the years, and she has come into her power and come into her strength so beautifully. Like she never apologizes unless it's a legitimate need for apology, but she never apologizes for just being there. She's come into connection with her own self-confidence and self-worth, stepped into her power, and she has really transformed the way she shows up in her life and in her relationships and become a very strong, powerful woman.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Reminds me of a lady we had come through here about, well, actually she's still here, about 2 years ago. She couldn't say no.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, is it okay if I poke you and I with a sharp stick? Well, let me think about that. I don't think that'll be a good idea. I mean, like, are you kidding me? Wild. She was a doormat.
Yeah.
And yeah, and found her power too. Her income went up 5x in a year.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's really cool.
I love the
And
power of no.
yeah, yeah. And like, what do instead of being a doormat, what do you really choose for your life? But she was burned out at 35. Wild. It's amazing how quickly somebody can change once they take the garbage out.
Yeah. Yeah. It's truly transformational.
Yep. So you went to school for this, and and I remember you saying also that you had a lot of defense mechanisms as well when you were going to conventional therapy. So just guessing here, you had some trauma in your life. So usually the best healers are the ones that are healing themselves. So when did you decide to go into this journey?
Well, as you intuited, yeah, I had a lot of childhood trauma. I had attempted to take my life when I was a teenager, and there was a lot of unresolved childhood trauma and a lot of unacknowledged childhood trauma and a lot of re-traumatization that occurred through the therapist that I work with. For example, when I was hospitalized following my suicide attempt, I was basically told by my therapists that my suicide attempt was not real. I was just attention seeking, that my life was perfect, and I was just a whiny little teenager, basically. And after that happened, I shut down. Basically, like everything that was wrong with my life must be me. And I really shut down and locked myself away and put on a little happy mask and tried my best to, help other people. So I worked in a nursing home. I worked at Vision Quest with adjudicated youth. I worked in various other helping professions before I went into school to get my social work degree. But all of that time I was dying inside. But I didn't trust therapy at that point. And I didn't really know where to turn. And while I was in school, I was 28, 29 at the time. And I was part of this online group, and I discovered the woman who led the group was a Reiki master, and she was offering training. Never heard about Reiki, didn't know anything about it, but as soon as I read about it, there was something inside of me that just lit up. I was like, I need this. I don't know why, but I need it. So I immediately signed up to learn all 3 levels, and that was an opening for me into the world of holistic, the holistic energy medicine and all of that, because I didn't know that world existed prior to that time. And so Reiki itself was lovely because it gave me a tool just, to self-soothe and self-care and to nurture myself. And that was very helpful. And then Elizabeth, who I mentioned earlier, when I met her, that was in a meditation class that I took with her when I originally met her. And I started learning about the chakra system, and I started at the same time. Like I said, I was in social work, and I was working for an organization that was introducing the sanctuary model for trauma-informed care into the program. And I was a core trainer for that. So I started learning about trauma. And those 2 worlds came together, and suddenly my life made sense. As I started to understand the chakra system and the consciousness within our body and how that functions, and also to understand trauma, through that, I was actually able to identify that I had trauma in the first place, and that I just wasn't a screwed up kid. But suddenly my life started to make sense, and I was able to start making progress in my own healing. And became, of course, I'm a healer by nature, so I was very passionate about being able to bring this to others because I knew how much it helped me. And that's where I became very passionate about being able to want to bring this to other people, because I know how powerful it is. I know how effective it is. And I know that it can transform lives.
Beautiful. So when did you, whoops, I had an echo on the line there for a second. When did you attempt to take your own life?
When I was 15.
15? And how did you try to do that?
In that, I should clarify, there were a few minor attempts prior to this, but the big attempt that ended me in the hospital, I swallowed a bottle of sleeping pills.
Pretty serious. And your parents had no idea what was going on with you, or?
They knew I was struggling because I'd been cutting, and I'd been running away from home. I'd been, I was having a lot of problems. I was very angry. I was very scared. I really didn't understand a lot of the things that were happening around me and within the home. And so they knew I was struggling. They had me seeing a therapist who was kind of worthless. She was one, like I said, I could sit there and talk for an hour about nothing. And I did. So they were aware that I was having a hard time, but they didn't really know what to do about it.
Gotcha.
So
yeah, I did some therapy as well, and when I was married, and my goal when I went to a therapist was to get the therapist on my side. Like, oh, I won, as if.
So you need a little validation there.
And really, when one, going to a therapist, you get the therapist on your side, no one wins. Yeah, but I sure felt good about myself when I could get the therapist on my side.
Right.
So when you got out of the hospital, so you're in the hospital and going through that, and what had you turn it around? I guess you only tried the one time, and then you didn't do it after that, correct?
No, I didn't try again after I was hospitalized. I felt like I was.
That kind of scare you, or?
That didn't scare me, but I felt like I was in a fishbowl after, everybody was hyper focused on me and everybody was afraid of me. So I was trying really hard to prove to everybody that I was okay because, like I said, the doctors were saying, well, there's nothing wrong. So you're just an attention seeking child. And so like I said, I just shut myself down and I put on the mask of a happy face and tried to make everybody believe that I was okay while I was basically dying inside.
Gotcha.
And soon after that, my sister ended up hospitalized, and she was in and out of hospitals for quite a while from multiple suicide attempts. So I also became I became very externally focused. So I was very focused on her. I was very focused on taking care of everybody else and neglecting me.
Gotcha. Was she younger or older?
Older.
Older. So what was going on in your family? Was it like sexual abuse going on in your family, or?
Just for the sake of other people's privacy, I don't want to get into that. But there was a lot of abuse happening in the home, but I don't want to get into specifics. Just
Gotcha, gotcha. Yeah, I know. I've worked with a lot of people involved with sexual abuse and just a lot of corporal punishment and yelling and hitting and all that stuff. I came from some things as well. That's how I got into this field as well, also. And it's interesting. I was the oldest, and my brother had a whole different experience with my family. I mean, it was so it doesn't just because one person one kid had one experience, another sibling can have a totally different experience. And it's not
yeah,
it's kind of it's not just what happens to somebody; it's what they make up about what happens to themselves. What they make up about it
sure.
that can really imprison them.
Yeah,
And getting people collapse from what they make up about to what happened to their story is an interesting process.
yeah, it is for
So
sure.
so where are you headed with your practice now, Linda?
So one of the things that I'm doing is I've developed a trauma-informed energy healing and coaching certification program because
Awesome. I had a feeling.
yeah, because I found that that is a huge gap in the industry. There's a
Mm,
lot of people who come to me from having gone to other practitioners and stuff that have actually also been re-traumatized by other practitioners, not because the practitioner is doing anything intentionally wrong, but because the practitioners are not aware.
right.
And so they don't know how to safely handle somebody with trauma. They don't understand the complexity of it. And so just inadvertently, they're causing more harm. And it's such an important thing for people to know, not because we necessarily are treating the trauma, but because we need to know how to handle it when it is in front of us. And we need to know how to be safe for the people who come to us so that we're not engaging in dangerous power dynamics and things like that. Because, for example, and you probably have seen this, when people come to see a practitioner, they throw their power in your lap, and they get into a lot of unsafe dynamics with the people that they go to for help just because they're acting out of their own trauma. And as
Right,
a
right.
practitioner, we need to know how to navigate that and be aware of it and be able to recognize it. So that's a big piece of the direction I want to go with my practice is doing my part to ensure that as many people who work in this field as possible really get a thorough understanding of trauma and how to safely work with it if it comes up with the people that they work with.
Yeah. Have you have you ever done any ICF classes, International Coaching Federation classes, or any of those things?
I've looked at some of them. I haven't done any of them at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, I went through some of their, I guess, retreats or conferences, and then looked at a lot of different coaches and teach within their modality. To me, it was very different than the intuitive stuff that you're doing here in the energy work.
Hmm.
So, but we started our own coaching certification as well, and
Hmm.
we actually partnered we actually had a university master's level psychologist come to our class about 4 years ago,
Hmm.
and they came through here and they said, "Hey, what you're doing is like next level PhD work, and I'd like to introduce you to the dean of our school." And he did, and they came and audited our classes, audited our students to see if we were producing the results I said we were. And my body of work I got qualified for a PhD. I had to do some other stuff as well, but just the curriculum and stuff we wrote and all that stuff, qualified for the PhD program. So we got our PhDs, and now people can come take our classes and get a master's or PhD in transformational life coaching or transformational leadership development, which is that was kind of cool.
That is
We're,
pretty cool. That's amazing.
yep, that was interesting. A lot of modalities talk about you got to let go of something or release it or get rid of it or something. And I kept saying, that stuff. Whenever I would try to do that like that, it really worked for me. I said, you got to get a PhD in anger. You get a PhD in anger, then you could help somebody else. Like plus you can recognize it's never a person. It's always a situation that reminds you of something. So if you get a PhD in it, you recognize if it comes back in different forms to try to hook you again. So I kept saying, you got to get a PhD in it. You got to get a PhD, and then now we have a PhD program. It's funny how it's beautiful how language creates reality.
Right?
Yeah. So where do we go from here? What else do you like to talk about, Linda? You have children?
I do not. No.
Married?
I'm not married. I am in a committed relationship, but we haven't got married yet. We may, but
Awesome.
We've been together.
How long you been in a relationship?
We've been together a little over 5 years. We actually got together during the pandemic.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah, we got to, one thing that we both love to do, and then one of the only things you can do during a pandemic is go hiking. So that's how we met.
In some places that want you going hiking either.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
But I was still able to go hiking. That would have killed me. That would have killed me if I couldn't go hiking.
Gotcha. So how do people get in touch with you, Linda?
You can reach me through my website, which is wellnessinharmony.com. I am on social media as well, but like I said, I don't spend a lot of time there, so the website's the best way to reach me. And you can email me, linda@wellnessinharmony.com as well. So.
And I assume a lot of the stuff you do is virtual.
Not entirely. No, this is my office here and I do see people here. A lot of people love to see me in person. So, but I also do work virtually as well for people who are not local, but the local people usually like to be in person.
Gotcha. And I do have one question to ask you, parting question. What do you love about life?
I love the diversity of it. There's so much richness in the world and so many different ways to experience, the joy and wonder of life. So that's what I love about it.
Beautiful. Well, Linda, thank you for being on the show. And
Thank you so much.
I look forward to maybe staying in touch with you and seeing
that'd
where you're headed.
Love it. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for inviting me.
You're welcome, Linda. Have a beautiful day.